Xinyu was upright and principled, loving me as if I were his very life. Though I bore a hidden ailment that left me unable to conceive, he never took a concubine. Yet one day, I discovered a sachet among his inner garments. Exquisitely crafted, it bore the characters Wanwan embroidered in silver thread. But my maiden name was not Wanwan. My hands trembled as I clutched the pouch, my heart skipping a beat. Xinyu had never shown interest in such feminine trinkets. Even the handkerchiefs I embroidered for him, he would only accept politely, never once wearing them. Wanwan. Wanwan. As I murmured these two characters, clarity slowly returned to my mind. Wanwan was the maiden name of Xinyu's cousin, Songwan. They had been childhood sweethearts since they were young, and their marriage had been betrothed long ago. But later, Xinyu's father was wrongfully imprisoned. His opportunistic aunt then used every excuse to back out, and the marriage simply faded away. Though my father held only a minor fifth-rank official post, he was a man of integrity. He secretly aided the Shin family in clearing their name, gathering substantial evidence. Eventually, the Shin family's innocence was proven, and their former glory restored. To repay this kindness, Xinyu's father came to propose marriage, arranging for me to wed Xinyu. Even knowing I carried a hidden ailment that made childbirth impossible, he never showed disdain. After marrying into the Shin family, I devoted myself entirely to restoring my health. Day after day, I drank those bitter herbal concoctions, yearning only to bear a son or daughter for the Shin household. Yet my ill-fated father-in-law and mother-in-law never lived to see the birth of a direct descendant. They passed away first. Now, 5 years into our marriage, I still bear no children. I take quiet solace in Xinyu's integrity and devotion. He loves me deeply and has never taken a concubine despite my infertility. This thought brings Songwon's delicate, charming face to mind. Yesterday, she visited our home, claiming to bring birthday gifts. I received her courteously, even inviting her to stay for 2 days and assigning her the finest courtyard. Perhaps fearing I might harbor suspicions, Xinyu treated Songwon with cold detachment in my presence. But now, what was the meaning of this sachet? Could it be? No, impossible. I shook my head, trying to banish this absurd notion. Xinyu isn't that kind of man. He's gentle and upright, how could he do such a thing? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. It must have been left behind by Songwon during our casual chat in my room, somehow ending up in Xinyu's inner robe. Yes, that must be it. I took another deep breath, suppressing my emotions. After a moment's thought, I placed the sachet back where I'd found it. My lady, I'm home. Xinyu's voice drifted in from outside the door, as gentle as ever. I hurried to meet him, taking the book chest from his hands. My husband, why have you returned so early today? I asked with a smile. The academy had a day off today, so I came back early to be with you. Xinyu spoke, reaching to wrap his arm around my waist, but I instinctively pulled away. His hand froze midair, a flicker of confusion crossing his eyes. My lady, what's wrong? I forced a smile and shook my head. Nothing. I'm just feeling a little unwell. Have you caught a chill? I'll have Aunt Zhang fetch a physician. Xinyu said, starting to leave. It's unnecessary. I'm just tired and want to rest a while. I pulled his sleeve and whispered back. Xinyu looked at me, his gaze deep, as if trying to see right through me. I avoided his eyes, my heart uneasy. After a long moment, Xinyu sighed softly and pulled me into his embrace. We are one in marriage. If something troubles you, tell me. Don't keep it bottled up inside. His embrace was as warm as ever, yet I felt only chill. How I longed to tell him that beneath his inner robe lay a sachet embroidered with another's name, how it unsettled me, how I feared. But the words wouldn't come. My lady, are you crying? No. I denied hastily, reaching to wipe the tears from my face, only to have my wrist seized tightly. Tell me. What has happened? Xinyu's tone turned stern. I dared not meet his gaze, turning my head away as I tried to pull free from his embrace. Just then, urgent knocking sounded at the door. Madam! Master! It's terrible! Miss Songwon! Miss Songwon has fallen into the water. Xinyu shoved me away abruptly, striding to the door and flinging it open. What happened? He was unusually flustered. "Sir, Miss Song-won." She. The maid seemed to have run breathlessly, gasping for air. Miss Song-won was strolling in the courtyard and accidentally fell into the lotus pond. "She hasn't been rescued yet." Shin Yu's face instantly drained of color. He grabbed the maid by the collar and demanded harshly, "How could she fall into the pond? What are you servants good for?" The maid trembled in fear under Shin Yu's glare, stammering, "Miss Song-won said she wanted to be alone for a while." "Useless!" Shin Yu bellowed, shoving her to the ground before storming out. I stood rooted to the spot, watching his retreating figure, my chest tightening until I could barely breathe. He'd never lost his composure like this before me, nor shown such concern. Could it be he still cherished their youthful affection? That he truly cared for Song-won, which was why he was so frantic? I hastily threw on my cloak and hurried after him. It was deep winter now, the wind bitingly cold. Following Shin Yu's footsteps, I arrived at the lotus pond within the estate. By then, the pond's edge was already crowded with people. Servants were using long bamboo poles to fish through the water. Shin Yu stood at the pond's edge, his face ashen, staring silently at the surface. I approached, gently tugging his sleeve and whispered, "How is my cousin?" Shin Yu turned to look at me, his eyes filled with anxiety and worry, but he said nothing. My heart sank. Could Song-won really be? Just then, a sudden cry rang out, "Found her! Found her!" I looked up quickly and saw a servant pulling a woman from the water. Her body was soaked through, long hair tangled and hanging over her shoulders. Her face was as pale as paper, utterly lifeless. It was Song-won. Shin Yu immediately rushed to the edge of the pond, scooped Song-won into his arms, and cried out frantically, "Won-won! Won-won! Wake up!" I stood rooted to the spot, watching Shin Yu clasp Song-won tightly, my heart brimming with hurt. He hadn't even considered the propriety between men and women, hadn't realized his wife still stood beside him. Shin Yu strode back holding Song-won, and I silently followed behind them, my heart filled with bitterness. Back in the room, Shin Yu gently laid Song-won on the bed before turning to instruct servants to fetch the estate physician. I stood nearby, watching Shin Yu bustle about. I wanted to say something, yet no words came to mind. He didn't even notice my presence. I silently walked to the table, poured a cup of hot tea, and handed it to Shin Yu. "Husband, please drink some tea to warm yourself first." Shin Yu took the teacup without even glancing at me, merely saying, "Thank you." Then he turned away, returning to stand watch by Song-won's bedside. My hand froze midair. After a long moment, I spoke in a flat tone, "Husband, there are distinctions between men and women. Moreover, cousin Song is not yet married. This behavior is inappropriate." Shin Yu seemed to suddenly realize something. He scrambled to his feet, his eyes darting nervously, unable to meet mine. "My lady. I was just worried about my cousin. She's always been frail. Worry leads to disorder, but it must not break the rules." I cut him off, my tone uncharacteristically calm. "Besides, with maids, servants, and the household physician present, why must you personally attend to her?" Shin Yu opened his mouth as if to protest, but ultimately said nothing. He merely picked up the cup of cold tea from the table and gulped it down in large mouthfuls. Cough. Cough. He suddenly began coughing, his face flushing crimson. My heart skipped a beat, and I hurried forward to pat his back and help him clear his throat. "Husband, drink more slowly. Be careful not to choke. I'll fetch you a fresh cup of hot tea." "No need." His voice was hoarse but firm. I paused, then silently stepped aside. After a long moment, he turned to look at me, a hint of apology in his eyes. "Just now, I lost my composure." I shook my head, forcing a wry smile. "There's no need for that, my lord. Cousin Song is gentle and kind. Your concern for her is only natural." He opened his mouth as if to speak, but only nodded silently. The room fell into dead silence once more. I took a deep breath, suppressing the emotions churning within me, and said softly, "It's late. You should rest, my lord." With that, I turned and walked toward the door. "My lady, wait." His sudden voice halted me. I stopped and turned to look at him. He stepped closer, his hand reaching out as if to touch my cheek, yet at the last moment, it froze midair. His hand hung stiffly in the air, as if hesitating, or perhaps struggling. I lifted my face and asked, "What is it? Won't you rest with me tonight?" He drew a deep breath, as if finally resolved, and said in a low voice, "Tonight. I wish to sleep in the study." A string snapped inside me. I slowly closed my eyes. So it was true, the one who truly mattered to him had always been Song-won. I stayed awake all night, meticulously folding Shin-yu's clothes one by one. His belongings were few, and his room always felt cold and empty. Suddenly, I recalled the day Song-won visited the mansion. For the first time ever, he had ordered new teaware brought out, saying Song-won preferred the light fragrance of tea. Ah, the delicate aroma of tea. I gave a bitter laugh to myself. So he would go to such lengths for another woman. When I reached the bottom drawer of his wardrobe, I felt a bundle wrapped in fine silk. Curiosity got the better of me. I unwrapped the silk to find a small portrait. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. The portrait showed two children, both smiling with an endearing innocence. The boy was about 5 or 6 years old. His features bore a faint resemblance to Shin-yu's, though his eyes held a spark of mischief and liveliness Shin-yu never possessed. He held a sugar-coated hawthorn on a stick, happily licking it, with a few sparkling sugar crystals still clinging to the corners of his mouth. Snuggled beside him was a little girl, about 3 or 4 years old. Her large, watery eyes, petite nose, and rosy lips made her look like a delicate porcelain doll. Whose children were these? A wild thought suddenly flashed through my mind. Could it be Shin-yu's illegitimate child? But how could that be possible? The moment the thought emerged, it began to grow wildly like weeds. I clenched the small portrait tightly, my knuckles turning white, veins bulging on the back of my hand. No! Impossible! Shin-yu. He didn't care that I couldn't bear children? How could he do such a thing? I froze, countless fragments flashing through my mind. Lately, he'd been leaving early and returning late, claiming he was preparing poems for the poetry gathering. Could he have been visiting these two children instead? In the secret compartment of his study, there were always exquisitely crafted sugar figurines and pastries. I'd assumed they were gifts from a classmate, but now I realized they were clearly. The small portrait slipped from my grasp, falling to the floor as grief overwhelmed me. Did Shin-yu never care about my infertility because he already had illegitimate children? I staggered backward, my back slamming against the cold wall before I could steady myself. After regaining my composure, I paid a sum of silver to bribe Shin-yu's personal servant. The servant revealed that Shin-yu visited a secluded villa on the outskirts of the city on the 1st and 15th days of every lunar month. My mind reeled, and I only instructed the servant to keep watching. Even when Song-won recovered and returned home, I paid her no mind. The days that followed felt like torture. Food lost its taste, sleep eluded me. My already slender frame grew gaunt, as if a breeze could knock me over. Half a month later, the servant finally came running in a panic, saying Shin-yu had left the house carrying many toys children would love, apparently heading for that villa. I could no longer contain myself. Hastily following the servant's directions, I arrived at the villa on the outskirts of the city. It was an exquisitely elegant courtyard. Rockeries and flowing water, bamboo shadows swaying. Holding my breath, I crept to the wall and peered through a crack into the courtyard. There stood Shin-yu, clad in a moon-white robe, a gentle smile playing on his lips. Beside him, nestled close, was a woman in a pale pink gown. That woman was none other than his cousin, Song-won. My heart sank violently. Darkness swirled before my eyes, and I nearly lost my footing. Beside them, two children played and frolicked. A boy and a girl, both bearing a striking resemblance to Shin-yu and Song-won in their features. "Daddy, please play with us a little longer." The little girl clung to Shin-yu's leg, pleading sweetly. "Yes, Daddy, you promised to fly kites with us today," echoed the little boy. Shin-yu smiled, ruffling both children's hair with eyes full of affection. "All right, Daddy will play with you." Song-won also covered her mouth and laughed. "You too, always clinging to Daddy. Don't you worry about tiring him out?" Not tired at all." Being with my little treasures, Daddy isn't tired in the slightest. Shinyu spoke, lifting each child high above his head, making them giggle uncontrollably. I clamped my hand tightly over my mouth, forcing myself to remain silent. The family of 4 radiated pure, unadulterated joy. Standing outside the courtyard wall, I felt as if struck by lightning, my body stiffened, unable to move. So this was the truth. The maid helped me into the carriage, and I wept intermittently all the way home. By the end, my throat felt scorched, even breathing causing pain. Upon returning to the mansion, I collapsed onto the bed, unconscious. In a haze, I sensed someone taking my pulse, while the maid's panicked voice reached my ears. "Madam, wake up! The physician! How is she?" I forced my heavy eyelids open to see the court physician seated beside the bed, his brow furrowed, expression grave. "What's wrong with me?" I struggled to sit up, only to find my body utterly weak. "Madam, you've suffered a sudden surge of anger overwhelming your heart, coupled with excessive worry, leading to this physical weakness." The physician stroked his graying beard and spoke slowly, "I shall prescribe several doses of medicine. Take them as directed and focus on recuperating." I nodded weakly, yet the scene from the annex kept replaying in my mind, my heart twisting in agony. "Madam, this bracelet." He hesitated, his gaze settling on the translucent green jade bracelet encircling my wrist. "This was the gift Shinyu gave me on our wedding night." I smiled bitterly. How ironic this bracelet seems now. "What about it?" My voice was hoarse. The physician hesitated before speaking. "This bracelet. It seems to contain traces of musk." Skeptical, I picked up the bracelet and examined it closely, yet found nothing unusual. "Madam, look here." The maid pointed to the inner edge of the bracelet, where a tiny crack ran along the seam, barely noticeable without close inspection. She took out a silver needle and gently scraped a small piece of black substance from the crevice. "Musk?" I jolted upright, grabbing the court physician's hand urgently. "Are you certain it's musk?" Startled by my sudden outburst, the physician still nodded. "I've practiced medicine for decades. I would never misdiagnose. This bracelet is indeed laced with musk, a significant amount. Wearing it long-term could lead to... It could cause infertility, correct?" My hand went limp, releasing the bracelet. It slid off my wrist, crashing to the floor with a sharp crack. So, from the very beginning, he never intended for me to bear his child. Even though I already carried a hidden ailment, unable to conceive. Yet he still feared I might become pregnant, forcing me to sleep night after night with musk by my side. 3 days later, I summoned the city's most renowned jeweler to craft a unique set of jewelry. Half a month later, the jeweler arrived at the mansion bearing his meticulously crafted pieces. I dismissed the attendants and motioned for him to speak. "Madam, the jewelry you requested is complete," the jeweler said respectfully, opening the brocade box in his hands. Inside the box lay a magnificent set of head ornaments, shimmering with dazzling colors, breathtakingly beautiful. I picked up one of the golden hairpins and examined it closely. This hairpin was exquisitely crafted, its head shaped like a blooming peony. The petals were layered and lifelike, with a brilliant ruby adorning the center, dazzlingly radiant. "Madam, this ruby." The jeweler hesitated, words caught in his throat. I set the hairpin down and asked calmly, "Is there a problem with this ruby?" The jeweler wiped sweat from his brow and replied cautiously, "Madam, this ruby. It's poisonous." "Poisonous?" I chuckled softly. What in this world could be more poisonous than the human heart? The jeweler fell to his knees with a thud, kowtowing repeatedly. "Forgive me, madam. I was only following your instructions." I idly toyed with the golden hairpin, my tone unruffled. "Rise. I hold you no blame. Tell me, what kind of poison does this ruby hold? How does it work?" Only then did the jeweler tremblingly rise from the floor. "Madam," he stammered, "this ruby is a rare poisonous gem from the western regions, known as blood jade. It contains a potent toxin. But this poison is peculiar. It does not kill instantly. Instead, over time, it seeps into the skin of the wearer, gradually. What happens in the end?" I pressed, my tone devoid of emotion. It utterly destroys one's appearance, leaving them withered and emaciated. By this point, the jeweler's voice was barely above a whisper, fearful of provoking my wrath. I curved my lips into a faint smile. How fitting, a blood jade. It suits my taste perfectly. Very well. I picked up the headpiece. This set of jewelry pleased me greatly. You may withdraw and collect your reward. Thank you, madam, for your bounty. The jeweler, as if granted a pardon, bowed profusely and withdrew. As the Lantern Festival approached, I hosted a grand lantern display, inviting the city's most distinguished officials and nobles. The festivities were magnificent. I appeared before the guests in a crimson ruchuan embroidered with golden peonies. Xin Yu, busy attending to his guests, flashed a look of astonishment. He offered insincere praise. My lady looks truly splendid today. I covered my mouth with a soft laugh. My lord, I've specially prepared several prizes for the Lantern Festival. Whoever solves the most riddles will claim the finest prize. Saying this, I slowly opened the brocade box, revealing the blood jade headdress and some ordinary jewels before the assembled guests. Wow! How exquisite! These rubies are truly unparalleled, utterly breathtaking. The guests all showered praise. Songwon, seated nearby, stared at the blood jade jewelry with eyes fixed and filled with determination. I understood perfectly. Xinyu had prepared all the lantern riddles, and he must have already revealed the answers to Songwon. Sure enough, Songwon effortlessly claimed first place in the riddle-solving competition. I smiled and congratulated her. Congratulations, cousin Song. This blood jade headdress is yours. Xinyu's gaze followed the crowds and settled on Songwon. Noticing Xinyu looking at her, Songwon lowered her head coyly, yet couldn't hide the smug smile playing at the corners of her lips. Though resentment churned within me, I maintained my smile. Cousin Song is so gentle and gracious. This headdress suits you perfectly. Seeing my reaction, the surrounding guests chimed in with flattering remarks. Thus, without any suspense, the blood jade headdress fell into Songwon's hands. Ever since Songwon acquired this blood jade headdress, she wore it daily, radiating joy. As expected, however, her health deteriorated day by day. Servants reported she first lost her appetite and suffered night sweats, then began coughing up phlegm tinged with blood. Finally, her face became covered in dense clusters of dark pimples. Xinyu grew frantic, summoning the city's finest physicians to examine her, yet none could determine the cause. They merely attributed it to general weakness, advising careful recuperation. For months on end, Songwon remained confined to the villa, never venturing out. Xinyu stayed there night after night, only sending word to me that the academy was busy with the compilation of historical records. One day, Xinyu returned home to fetch a change of clothes. I deliberately wore a soft, pale yellow gown, feigning a welcome at the mansion gate. Sure enough, Xinyu's gaze was drawn to me the moment he stepped down from the carriage. My lady, this attire you wear today. Xinyu paused, finally managing only, it is most captivating. I chuckled softly. My lord jests. This is merely the attire I wear daily. No, it is different. Xinyu drew closer, his gaze lingering over me. My lady is exceptionally beautiful today. Humph. The blood jade poison had left Songwon gaunt and haggard. Even Xinyu's deepest devotion couldn't shield him from finding her appearance repulsive. Now, seeing me radiant and full of life, his thoughts inevitably turned elsewhere. Xinyu reached out to touch my cheek, but I shifted slightly, evading his hand. Husband, weren't you going to the academy after getting dressed? Shouldn't you hurry? Xinyu's hand froze midair, a flicker of awkwardness crossing his face. I've been feeling a bit tired lately. I'd like to rest a moment before leaving. I gave him a half smile, offering no reply. As I turned to enter the room, Xinyu seized my wrist. Oh, madam, might you spare some silver for me? A cold laugh rose in my heart. More silver? Probably to pay for Songwon's facial treatments. I feigned confusion. What's the matter, my lord? Short on silver again? But I recall this month's allowance was just distributed. Xinyu's expression darkened further. He opened his mouth, yet seemed unable to speak, finally letting out only a long sigh. Lately. It's a long story. Lately, managing connections has left me stretched thin. I wonder if my lady could. Could you lend me some silver first? I'll repay you when my lord finds it convenient. I cut him off, my tone laced with sarcasm. Xinyu's face flushed crimson, yet he lacked the strength to argue. He could only nod in agreement. Watching his pathetic demeanor, a wave of satisfaction washed over me. I feigned deep thought for a moment before speaking slowly. My lord knows our household expenses are enormous now, and we're already spending more than we earn. However, my dowry has always been under my personal control. Drawing upon it isn't impossible, but... I deliberately stretched out my words, studying Xinyu's expression. True to my expectation, he grew anxious and pressed urgently, but what? My lady, speak freely. I spread my hands in a gesture of resignation. If my lord truly desires my dowry, then perhaps you could pledge the deeds to the Shin estate's lands to me, and affix your official seal. Xinyu visibly froze, clearly taken aback by my demand. He'd assumed I'd merely ask for a promissory note or some jewelry or antiques as collateral. My lady jests, he said, his awkward smile betraying his attempt to gloss over it. These are the foundations of the Shin family, built over centuries. How could I mortgage them lightly unless absolutely necessary? I dropped my smile and fixed him with a steady gaze. What? Does my lord not trust his wife? My tone carried a hint of hurt and dissatisfaction, my eyes glistening as if I'd suffered the greatest injustice. Xinyu visibly panicked, fearing he wouldn't get the silver. He hastily explained, "My lady misunderstands. That's not what I meant. It's just what?" I pressed him relentlessly. Does my lord perhaps think I only know how to spend money on adornments and am incapable of managing the family estate? Of course not. Xinyu hastily denied it. My lady possesses a graceful spirit and a gentle heart. I trust you completely. It's just that these land deeds represent the family fortune accumulated over generations of the Shin clan. He stammered, unable to articulate a coherent explanation for a long while. A cold laugh echoed in my heart. He was unwilling to part with the Shin family's wealth yet still sought silver from me. How laughable. If my lord finds this difficult, then so be it. I sighed in disappointment, but what about the silver? Not difficult, not difficult. Xinyu gritted his teeth, as if summoning great resolve. Since my lady is willing to share my burdens, I shall entrust the Shin family's assets to you. Secretly delighted, I remained outwardly composed. In that case, please draft a document transferring all the Shin family's fertile land deeds to my stewardship. Seal it with your official seal. Only then can I legitimately alleviate your burdens. He hurried to the desk, grinding ink and writing. I stood by, coldly observing his flustered movements. Soon, the document was complete. Xinyu respectfully presented the promissory note to me, his tone tinged with ingratiation. "Madam, please review it." I took the note, examined it carefully, and only after confirming its accuracy did I nod in satisfaction. When my husband handles matters, I naturally have complete confidence. I tucked the document away, then retrieved the Shin family seal and my own personal seal. Once we both affixed our seals, the matter would be settled. Though Xinyu felt some reluctance, he was now in a position where he couldn't back down. He had no choice but to agree to my request. Watching his despondent expression, I felt a surge of satisfaction. Even if Xinyu were to die someday, the Shin family's inheritance would never fall into others' hands. After receiving the silver, Xinyu lavishly hired numerous skilled physicians to treat Songwan. Yet despite all their efforts, Songwan still passed away. The servant said Xinyu clung to her corpse like a madman, weeping so bitterly he seemed ready to follow her in death. That day, after inspecting my shops and returning home, Xinyu was waiting at the gate to greet me. He held 2 infants by the hand, his face dark and grim, looking utterly wretched. "My lady, you've finally returned." He hurried toward me, his voice thick with grief. "Have you heard, my lady? Cousin Song. She's gone." I feigned surprise, covering my mouth. "How sudden? Wasn't she perfectly well just days ago? Did you consult a physician?" Xinyu's face was deathly pale as he shook his head weakly. "He did. The physician said there was nothing more to be done." His eyes reddened again as he spoke, tears threatening to spill at any moment. I sneered inwardly but offered gentle comfort. My lord, do not grieve so deeply. The dead cannot be brought back to life. Cousin Song's spirit in heaven would not wish to see you so broken-hearted. At these words, Xinyu's grief intensified, and he buried his face in his hands, weeping openly. Watching Xinyu display such grief, as if he'd lost his own parents, only deepened my disgust. Even the 2 children he held by the hand became unbearably irritating to me. Suppressing my discomfort, I adopted the gentle, gracious demeanor expected of a proper mistress and asked softly, "Husband, who are these children?" Only then did Xinyu seem to recall his 2 children. He roughly wiped away his tears and choked out, I found them a few days ago on my way to the Qingjing temple outside the city. It was bitterly cold, and the 2 children were nearly frozen to death. I took pity on them and brought them home. As if trying to convince himself, he continued, "My dear, since we have no children of our own, why not adopt them? It would be an act of kindness and virtue. Cousin Song, watching over us from heaven, would surely bless them." Humph. Xinyu, that man, is truly a master of lies. Suppressing my disgust, I forced a smile. My lord truly has the heart of a bodhisattva. These 2 children are indeed pitiful. Let them live well in the manor from now on. Hearing this, a flicker of relief finally touched Xinyu's sorrowful face. My lady is so understanding. I sneered inwardly. Understanding? He was in for a disappointment. After exchanging a few perfunctory words, I turned and entered the manor. Over the next few days, I deliberately neglected the 2 children. They were fed leftovers, made to sleep in the woodshed, and endured the scornful glances of the servants. Though I would never harm innocent children, I intended to make them understand that entering the Shen household was no path to luxury. Since Song Wan's death, Xinyu had been bedridden with illness, his mind clouded as he murmured her name incessantly. Though I loathed it, I had to maintain the facade of a virtuous wife, bringing him restorative soups daily. "Husband, it's time for your medicine." Xinyu lifted his head to look at me, his eyes vacant. After a long moment, his voice raspy, he said, "My lady. You say my cousin. Does she hate me? Is that why?" "Husband!" I snapped angrily, cutting him off. "Why are you talking nonsense again? Cousin Song had little fortune, it was her fate. How could you blame yourself?" But Xinyu clutched my hand as if I were a lifeline. "My lady, is it true? Could she truly not hate me?" I smiled warmly, clasping his hand in return. "Of course it's true, my lord. Stop these wild thoughts. Take care of yourself. Cousin Song's spirit in heaven wouldn't want to see you so despondent." Xinyu's eyes reddened again. He pulled me into his embrace, his voice choked with emotion. "My lady, you're the only one who truly cares for me." He held me so tightly I could barely breathe, yet I forced myself to appear tender and considerate, gently patting his back. Just then, a sudden commotion erupted outside the door. "Help! Someone's dead. Poisoned! Quick, save them!" I pushed Xinyu away and hurried out. In the courtyard, Xinyu's 2 children lay sprawled on the ground, their faces turning blue and purple, foam forming at their mouths. Scattered beside them were several bright red berries. The servants stood in shock, pointing and whispering around the children. They must have been poisoned. That southern heavenly bamboo in the backyard bore some poisonous berries. How could these children have picked and eaten them? My heart sank. Pushing through the crowd, I demanded sharply, "What's going on here?" A bold servant stammered in reply, "Madam, we don't know. The children picked the berries from somewhere and ate them. By the time we found them." "This is outrageous!" I shouted angrily. How could such a poisonous tree be allowed to grow in the estate? "Hurry and fetch the estate physician." Yes. The servants, terrified, hurried off immediately. After the estate physician arrived, he merely checked the children's breath and slowly shook his head. Alas, it's already too late for medicine. Looking at the 2 children lying on the ground in a pitiful state, a faint pity arose in my heart. Having heard that Song Wan cherished southern heavenly bamboo most, Xinyu personally planted it in the estate. Little did he know this very plant would claim the lives of his and Songwon's twin children. I sighed and instructed the servants, "Go fetch the master. Let him see these poor children." When Shinyu was escorted out by the servants, his face was pale and his steps unsteady, clearly still reeling from Songwon's death. The moment he saw the two children lying on the ground, his eyes widened. His lips trembled, and he was unable to speak. What happened? I gently took his arm and whispered, "Husband, these children. They accidentally ate poisoned fruit." Shinyu's body swayed as if unable to bear the blow. His vision darkened, and he fainted. "Husband! Husband!" I cried out, rushing to catch him. The servants panicked, scrambling to carry Shinyu back to his room. Gazing at Shinyu's pallid face, my heart remained strangely still. "Shinyu, Shinyu. You thought these two children were your lifeline, never imagining they'd become the final straw that broke you, did you?" For the next several days, Shinyu remained unconscious. The court physician declared him exhausted to the point of collapse, his recovery left to fate. I kept vigil by his side day and night, waiting only for the moment his breath would cease. 3 days later, Shinyu's parched lips twitched slightly. Knowing he had something to say, I pressed my ear close to his mouth. "My lady." His voice was hoarse, faint as the flutter of a mosquito's wings. "The children. They. Rest assured, my lord. The children have been laid to rest. You need not grieve. Your health is paramount." I comforted him in a soft, soothing voice. "The children. Where are they buried? In the Shin family ancestral tomb?" Shinyu struggled to speak, his cloudy eyes straining to focus on me, yet they seemed veiled in mist. I sighed softly and said, "Husband, do not fret. Listen to me. The children are buried." Shinyu seized my hand in desperation, his grip so fierce it felt as though he might crush my bones. I winced in pain but said nothing. "My lady, speak. Where are the children buried?" His eyes were bloodshot, his voice raspy as sandpaper. "Alas, I buried them. I buried them in the wild graveyard, reunited with their mother, cousin Song." I spoke these words with a smile. Hearing my words, Shinyu's eyes suddenly widened. The bloodshot vanished instantly, replaced by a bone-chilling terror. As if witnessing some unspeakable horror, his body convulsed violently. His mouth gaped wide, yet no sound emerged. "Husband? Husband, what's wrong?" I shook his body in panic, though my heart raced with excitement. A hoarse gurgle rose from his throat, as if he tried to speak but no words came. Watching his terrified expression, my heart swelled with the sweet satisfaction of revenge. You. He glared at me with a look of utter horror, his parched lips struggling to form 2 words, "So you knew all along, you poisonous bitch." Shinyu's eyes widened further and further. Finally, his head lolled to one side, and his life left him completely. I regarded his corpse coldly, my heart unmoved, filled only with the satisfaction of vengeance served. Had he no feelings for me, he could have divorced me. But he should not have harmed me in secret, nor deceived me by pretending we were in perfect harmony. Now, however, it was all too late. I rose, smoothed my slightly disheveled robes, then turned and walked toward the door. "Someone, Master, has passed." I covered my face and wept, yet my voice betrayed no sorrow. After 5 years of marriage to Shinyu, I suppose I've done one good deed, reuniting his entire family of 4 in the underworld. The end.